I have to say, I have a lot of memories of Diane. I guess I feel as though I've known you my whole life. After the shocking death of Diane Keaton, Al Pacino finally broke the silence he had kept for 4 decades. You're a great artist. I remember it and I love it, and I love you forever. Behind the lights of The Godfather lay a story filled with contradictions where fame, love, and regret blended like a never-ending play. I came here because I need you, because I care for you. Please stop it. Michael, because I want you to marry me. Al's new memoir left Hollywood stunned, not only because of love, but because of the things he had never dared to say. The mysterious bond between them was about to be revealed, and the whole truth would unfold right in this video. The actress, Diane Keaton, has died at the age of 79. Millions who are already devoted fans, ready to recall her greatness. On October 11th, 2025, Diane Keaton passed away in California at the age of 79. Her family confirmed the news through People magazine. The New York Times described her as an icon of intelligence, grace, and independence in American cinema. Vanity Fair wrote more briefly, but with weight, Diane Keaton was not just an actress. She was the attitude and personality of an entire generation. Those obituary lines closed nearly 6 decades of artistic work by one of the faces that shaped modern film. There was no public funeral. The family chose to keep things quiet, true to the reserved nature Diane maintained through her later years. That day, social media was filled with black and white images from Annie Hall and The Godfather, the 2 films that had elevated her name to legendary status. Diane Keaton is one of those actors that whenever she's in a film, you know that it's going to be good because of her presence in it. While colleagues and the public reminisced about her unforgettable roles, Al Pacino said in a statement to the media, "I loved her. She was the soul of Kay Corleone." And those were not the only words he dedicated to Diane. Before her passing, he had publicly written about the feelings he had kept private for decades along their journey. In that message, Al wrote, "We found a tempo and temperature that was right." Another line quoted by the press more than any other read. "She helped me through my ruins when I could barely stand." These words were seen as Al's quiet, most heartfelt farewell to his co-star and the woman he once loved, Diane. Newspapers revisited their connection, not with sensationalism, but with quiet reflection. The two never married. Their relationship was always spoken of with respect. The New Yorker called them the parallel opposites of classic Hollywood. One witty and light-hearted, the other introspective and deep. Diane's death made Al's words feel haunting. They were no longer just an expression of longing, but a late acknowledgement of someone who had been the most important part of his life. A close friend of Diane told People, "She lived truthfully, holding nothing back." I think Al understood that better than anyone. The sentence captured Diane's essence. She once said in an interview years ago, "I was never interested in being perfect. I just wanted to be honest." Amid the glitter of Hollywood, that way of life made her distinct and beloved. As the news spread, a group of young actors reposted an image of her, smiling in the final scene of Something's Gotta Give with the caption, "She made aging look fearless." At nearly 80, Diane was still working, still appearing regularly in book club. The next chapter released in 2023. She had said it would be her last film role. During the same period, Al Pacino rarely appeared in public. At 85, his health had clearly declined, and he only gave a few short interviews. When asked about Diane a few months earlier, he said simply, "She was special. I don't think anyone could replace her." It was his final public statement about her before her death. The media began revisiting the old chapters of his and Diane Keaton's lives. Every gaze turned toward the strange connection that had tied them for more than half a century. It was in East Harlem, and it was in a restaurant called Patsy's with the intimate cast of The Godfather. From Diane's death, people traced time backward to the moment they first met, when what seemed like an ordinary audition opened the door to a legend, the fated meeting. In the early 1970s, Hollywood was undergoing a transformation. Studios were searching for new faces who embodied a more realistic spirit, far from the polished glamour of the golden era. In that context, The Godfather began production. Francis Ford Coppola, then in his early 30s, was determined to cast Al Pacino as Michael Corleone, despite strong opposition from Paramount. He wrote in The Godfather notebook, "I saw something different in him, a silence that made others wary." The studio executives argued that Al was too short and not famous, but Coppola stood his ground. For the role of Kay Adams, Coppola chose Diane Keaton, an unknown stage actress who had just left Broadway. He wrote in his notes, "She looks like someone who doesn't belong to the mafia world. She will soften the darker corners of the story." Diane, barely in her 20s, never imagined that a small audition could change her entire career. Diane recalled, "I remember the first time I met Al Pacino. We met in a bar because we had to audition for The Godfather. The encounter was strange. Two young strangers, quiet and unfamiliar, asked to perform a love scene together. Diane later shared that Al hardly said a word, only looked at her through a haze of cigarette smoke, and that silence was what drew her in. Francis Ford Coppola later said in an interview, "Her audition was a performance I couldn't refuse." He knew he had found the right person for Kay, the only woman who could make Michael Corleone appear human amid a world of crime. Paramount still doubted his choices. According to the New York Times, the studio pressured Coppola to replace Al with a more established actor, but the director remained firm, willing to risk his own career to defend his decision. In March 1971, filming officially began in New York. The first scene featuring Al and Diane was the wedding of Connie Corleone, also their first appearance together on camera. Throughout the 8 months of shooting, tension filled the set. Al spoke to almost no one except Coppola. Diane, lively and full of laughter, became the only bridge between him and the crew. One crew member recalled she made Al smile for the first time in weeks. That interaction gradually created a unique chemistry between them. The Godfather was completed in August of the same year and released the following spring. When it premiered, the world of cinema changed. Al became the new face of the cold hero archetype, while Diane captivated audiences with Kay's tenderness and quiet strength. A critic wrote in the Los Angeles Times, "The two bring such authenticity that the audience forgets they are only characters." During the film's promotion, Diane and Al began appearing together more often. Still, both avoided discussing their personal relationship. Diane only shared that after the premiere, Al invited her to dinner at a small restaurant near Central Park. And that was the first time they truly talked. He wasn't like anyone I had ever met. He didn't try to be charming. He was simply different. Diane later said, "The success of The Godfather opened a new era for both of them. The film not only redefined the gangster genre, but also placed them at the center of 1970s American cinema." Al quickly earned an Oscar nomination, while Diane became one of the most sought-after actresses among young directors. After The Godfather, Diane and Al stepped off the set with dazzling fame and an invisible thread connecting them in real life. Success lifted them to the heights of stardom. It also placed them in the whirlpool of fame, expectation, and unspoken emptiness. From there, their relationship began to change between the lights of and the private shadows within their souls. Into the whirlwind of fame. After the success of The Godfather Part 2, Diane Keaton and Al Pacino officially entered a romantic relationship. They began seeing each other more often outside the set, appearing together at premieres and Paramount events. Both were rising stars. They chose to keep their private lives away from the media spotlight. Diane once shared, "Al is the love of my life, but we're complicated." A short sentence. It perfectly captured their contrast. One open and bright, the other private and deeply introspective. Diane's career exploded only a few years later. In 1977, Annie Hall was released and instantly became a cultural phenomenon. The role earned her the Academy Award for Best Actress. Her effortless style, natural performance, and intelligent charm made Diane a new symbol of the modern woman on screen. The media called her the face of an era, an image both artistic and grounded. She spoke candidly in interviews about women's freedom in the industry and about how success did not need to rely on male archetypes. Al Pacino reached another pinnacle of his own. Dog Day Afternoon made him an emblem of raw, rebellious emotion, while Scarface solidified his image as the most intense and transformative actor of the 1980s. A critic once described him as the face of America's post-war confusion, a man lost proud in his defiance. In one interview, Al said, "Diane and I have a rhythm that's ours." Their connection stemmed from a shared artistic pulse, even though their worlds were entirely different. Amid fame, they tried to maintain their bond. Diane often attended Al's rehearsals, occasionally showing up backstage. Friends recalled that they were never showy, just two people talking for hours about film theatre and the small details of life. But at the same time, their ways of handling fame began to diverge. Diane loved promotion conversations and sharing her emotions openly. Al withdrew, living quietly and avoiding noise. During that period, they continued to meet, but the relationship grew fragile. Diane moved toward independent projects, while Al was absorbed in major studio films. They crossed paths again on the set of Reds, where Keaton worked with Warren Beatty, and some tabloids began speculating that Pacino was jealous. Diane denied it, saying simply, "We're still friends. We don't need to define it." By the late 1980s, differences in lifestyle and perspective had worn them down. Diane spent most of her time in Los Angeles focusing on theater and contemplating directing. Al lived mainly in New York, committed to Broadway, and rarely seen in public. They still met at major events, award shows, film premieres, or occasionally backstage at talk shows. But in interviews, both avoided personal topics. What remained between them was quiet respect and understanding. They knew their bond hadn't broken for lack of love, but because fame had pulled them into separate worlds. Years passed, and Diane and Al continued to circle each other's lives like two planets sharing the same orbit, but never truly intersecting. Então, o destino colocou-os novamente frente a frente. Quando Francis Ford Coppola decidiu fazer O Padrinho Parte 3, quis reunir o elenco original para terminar a saga de 2 décadas. Diane Keaton e Al Pacino aceitaram regressar, mesmo tendo terminado a relação anos antes. As filmagens começaram no final de 1989 em Roma, e depois foram transferidas para Nova York para cenas interiores. No set, Diane manteve-se profissional e entusiasmada com a equipa, enquanto Al permaneceu quieto como sempre. Mal conversavam em privado, mas trabalhavam juntos perfeitamente nas cenas. Diane recordou mais tarde: foi um reencontro, mas complicado. A complexidade a que ela se referia não se resumia apenas a Michael e Kay, mas também aos dois na vida real. Nessa altura, Al Pacino enfrentava uma crise pessoal. Teve um filho com uma ex-amante, algo que magoou profundamente Diane. Mantivemos contato, mas o relacionamento esfriou após a notícia. Numa entrevista reflexiva, Al disse brevemente: foi uma despedida que espelhava as nossas personagens. Uma rara admissão de que a despedida no ecrã refletia a verdadeira despedida. Nas suas memórias, Diane escreveu de forma mais clara: eu disse-lhe que se ele não quisesse casar comigo, eu iria embora. E foi o que fiz. Não foi um ato impulsivo, mas o resultado de anos de espera por uma resposta que nunca chegou. Esta declaração decisiva pôs fim a quase 20 anos de ligação entre duas pessoas que viviam a ritmos diferentes, uma a precisar de compromisso, a outra a temer o apego. Francis Ford Coppola disse uma vez numa entrevista que, durante as filmagens da cena final entre Michael e Kay, ninguém no platô se atreveu a falar. Ele disse: eles não tinham de atuar. Bastava olhar um para o outro. O olhar entre Diane e Al naquele momento fez com que muitos acreditassem que ainda havia amor entre eles. Mas o realizador compreendeu que aquela era a verdadeira despedida. Quando as filmagens terminaram, em meados de 1990, seguiram caminhos separados. Diane dedicou-se a construir a sua própria pequena família, enquanto Al permaneceu imerso na arte, carregando feridas que só ele compreendia e das quais nunca falaria. As confissões finais. Após O Padrinho Parte 3. Diane Keaton afastou-se dos papéis emocionalmente pesados para procurar um ritmo de vida mais tranquilo. Adotou 2 filhos, Dexter em 1996 e Duke em 2001, e costumava dizer em entrevistas: a maternidade ensinou-me o que o amor realmente significa. Para Diane, ter filhos não era uma forma de comatar a ausência de amor, mas uma forma de reconstruir o seu próprio mundo. Nas 3 décadas seguintes, Diane continuou a aparecer em filmes que retratavam mulheres maduras, bem-humoradas e emocionalmente complexas. O Quarto de Marvin valeu-lhe outra nomeação para os Oscars. Enquanto alguém tem de ceder, a trouxe de volta ao centro das atenções, com um papel frequentemente descrito como o seu próprio reflexo. Uma mulher solitária e resiliente. A Pedra da Família, Because I Said So, e Clube do Livro mostraram que ela manteve o seu charme característico até os 60 anos. Muitos críticos notaram que Diane representava um tipo de carreira construída sem rivalidade ou ruído, duradoura e elegante. Al Pacino, por sua vez, entrou na década de 1990 num novo auge. Perfume de Mulher valeu-lhe o seu primeiro Oscar, confirmando o seu estatuto de mestre na arte. Protagonizou Fogo contra Fogo, O Informante, O Advogado do Diabo e muitos outros, mantendo uma posição única no meio de uma Hollywood em rápida transformação. Mas, por detrás dos seus triunfos profissionais, a sua vida pessoal manteve-se discreta. Al teve 3 filhos, os gêmeos Anton e Olivia com Beverly D'Angelo e um filho, Roman, com Noor Al-Fala, embora tenha tido muitas relações com as quais nunca se casou. Em conversa, Al disse: o casamento é um estado em que nunca entrei, mas conheci o amor. A frase foi citada vezes sem conta como um resumo perfeito da sua vida. Um homem que tinha tudo menos estabilidade no amor. 2024, Al Pacino publicou o seu livro de memórias, Sonny Boy. Um livro descrito pelos críticos como um simples e despreocupado autorretrato de alguém que viveu todos os ápices. Escreveu sobre a sua infância pobre no Bronx, as dificuldades da fama teatral que chegaram cedo demais e o vazio que se seguiu a cada papel. Nos capítulos intermédios, Al dedicou várias páginas a Diane Keaton, a única pessoa que mencionou com rara ternura. Ela ajudou-me a ultrapassar a ruína financeira ao empurrar o mar do amor. Poucos conheciam esta história no final da década de 1980, depois de Al ter sofrido um colapso financeiro após o fracasso da Revolução. Foi Diane quem o convenceu a aceitar o papel em Mar do Amor, ajudando-o a recuperar a sua reputação e a sua confiança. Noutra passagem, Al escreveu: "Ficamos bêbados juntos depois das filmagens de O Padrinho, e eu soube então que nunca mais encontraria alguém como ela." Embora não tenha especificado a época em que estas palavras demonstravam, Diane tornara-se uma parte insubstituível da sua memória. Sonny Boy, publicado pela Penguin Press, rapidamente se tornou um dos livros mais falados do mundo cinematográfico em 2024. Os críticos elogiaram o livro como cru, profundamente humano, porque na escrita de Al reside não só a sua carreira, mas o percurso de um homem que aprende a viver com a perda. Muitos notaram que a parte sobre Diane era o cerne do livro de memórias, onde Al finalmente admitiu que havia coisas que tinha deixado para trás. Diane e Al mantiveram uma amizade afetuosa, aparecendo ocasionalmente juntos em homenagens do American Film Institute. 2024. Quando Diane recebeu o prêmio pelo conjunto da sua obra, Al estava ali na primeira fila, de pé, a aplaudi-la enquanto ela subia ao palco. Quando questionado sobre a relação de ambos, respondeu simplesmente: "Ela mudou a forma como eu vejo o amor." Depois dessa noite, nunca mais foram vistos juntos. Um ano depois, Diane Keaton faleceu pacificamente na Califórnia. No meio das homenagens, Sonny Boy ressurgiu como uma espécie de despedida ao contrário. Não do falecido, mas daquele que ficou. As palavras que Al escreveu sobre Diane foram partilhadas em todo o lado como um adeus que nunca tinha dito em voz alta. Diane Keaton and Al Pacino left behind not only timeless performances, but also a legacy that reshaped how audiences viewed humanity in cinema. Diane redefined women's place on screen. Strong, vulnerable, witty, profound, always authentic in every stage of life. She proved that a woman didn't need to conform to be loved, that she could be the center of the story through honesty alone. Her style, from the wide-brimmed hats to her crisp way of speaking, became a symbol beyond film, a statement of freedom and identity. Al Pacino, with his piercing eyes and deep voice, embodied the imperfect hero. Quiet, fierce, and full of contradictions, he showed that the real power of acting lies in silence and gaze, not words. Each of his characters revealed another layer of the human condition: pride, weakness, yearning, and solitude. From The Godfather to Annie Hall, from dazzling beginnings to the quiet final years, they have never been forgotten in the audience's memory. Their connection needed no vows, no titles. It simply existed like a soft light across the screen where Michael looked at Kay one last time. If the story of Diane Keaton and Al Pacino made you think differently about love, attachment, and separation, leave a comment below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss more cinematic stories filled with meaning and depth.